Hello. All right, this is going to be in English because there are some English people in the crowd, so I'm going to talk English. That's what I usually don't do on Mondays, since there are a lot of students of mine here in the crowd. Thank you all for being here. It's our 6th or 7th meetup already, and today is all about JavaScript, so I hope people are really... yeah, that's whoo by everything I say, that's pretty awesome. Anu, where's my jacket? I don't know. Everybody keeps telling me that they're going to buy me a jacket because I always am hosting these meetups, and I don't look like a real MC, so where's my real jacket? But glitter jacket, yeah, all right, for next time maybe. Like I said, welcome at DPDK. It's nice to have you here. I think everybody had their burger, still has their beer, and is ready to have some actually, some... Mo.
Yeah, sorry.
Sit down. It's always the DPDK people, just keep going on. Today we have 2 talks, and those talks are very in-depth in the JavaScript world, the JavaScript world, because it's about the latest and greatest of JavaScript, which means they're going to be in-depth talks within code, and I think Onno and Colin are very excited to give us some talks. I see Colin smiling, like, yeah, I want first. No, Onno is first. So wait there. So yeah, I hope everyone is going to prepare some questions, because these guys don't make it too easy for them. Just gather some questions. I see Nick looking. Yeah, I have questions. Yeah, you do, huh? Already, of course. Cool. So give it up for our first speaker, Onno.
Is this working? Yes, working. All right, welcome. Hello, I'm Onno. I work here as a front-end developer. I'm going to talk a bit about connected transitions or connected transition animations in React. So I am going to assume some knowledge about React and about JavaScript. But if you have any questions along the way, just feel free to, raise your hand and ask away. So what are we talking about when I say that? This is not it. Where are we going? Oh wow, this is working. Almost. Nope, we're not wrapping up yet. Let's try that again. I'm not sure what was going on. How about now? Yes, it's working. Fuck. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. We have an example here. You see 2 pages. In order to give a user some context as to what is happening and to kind of guide them through a flow, what a developer might want to do is play an animation when the user changes the page, and in that animation connect 2 elements of the 2 different pages together with some transition to show that we're transitioning from like some grid image to like a detail view, and that the user still has like some mental map of where they are in the app, and that I don't kind of get lost in all the quick transitions or page views. You see it a lot. I'm not sure if this might be too small. In prototypes, there are a lot of quite talented UI designers who make some cool prototypes of how they envision applications working and how they see animations working in those applications. So these are a couple examples of these kind of connected transition animations. Yeah, so React. This is kind of the first thing I saw doing connected transitions inside of React. This is a code pen by Sarah Dresner. As you can see, we have a couple of views, and in between those views we have animations playing where components of those animations are transitioning from one state to the next. The way this is done is there's like a page component, and it just has different states, and when you change those states, these elements on the page are given new places to go, or given new coordinates, or and then an animation plays that it just moves those items to the right positions. What I was looking for, though, was a way to have just completely separate pages, completely separate components that don't necessarily need to know much about each other, could be loaded separately, independently of each other, and could be combined with a router that just changes pages, and when those pages are changed, kind of pick up on the fact that there are two elements and there's two different pages that are connected, and that way play an animation, so you don't have to know every little detail of where all the different elements in one page are going to go. That's what I was looking for. There are a couple. I tried a couple of ways to do it. One way to do it would be quite ugly. Wait, can I zoom this in? All right, this is just a little setup. We have to just do two different pages. They're rendered, and when I click at it, the page changes. So one way to do it is just to really ugly, do some global. We're just gonna when one page is gonna unmount, it's gonna get removed from the DOM. We're just gonna check, okay, where is it? What are its coordinates? What is its size? We're just gonna just put it in some global state somewhere. And on the next page, we're gonna check, okay, did we mount? Then we're just gonna get this global state from somewhere. Could be, I don't know, a Redux store or whatever state management you use. We're gonna get it by a name, and then when it finds it, it's gonna transition between the bounds that were set initially in the global state and the bounds of the current item. So what we get is, okay, we have two different pages, and when the next one loads, we have the element just gets put on the original position of where it came from, and is then transitioned or animated inwards to its actual position where it's initially rendered. You won't see it because it's too fast. The fact that it actually starts already on the left side, it just gets moved really quickly to the right side and then is animated to its actual position. But of course, this is not a very clean way to do it. I hope you'll agree. So I wanted something different. I couldn't find anything, so I made something different. I made a React component to wrap my the components I wanted to transition. This is what it would look like. We have a connected transition component, which we give a unique name on one page and then the same name on the other page where we want to transition it. It wraps around a component, which could have children, it could have whatever. The component it wraps around is gonna get some hooks called on it. So it first of all, when it unmounts or is mounting, it will get a transition data hook called on it. Here, the component can just provide whatever data it thinks is useful for the component of the same name on the different page. It then waits until it finds a combination of two components there where one is going away and one is coming in. When it finds it, it calls two other hooks. On the one that's leaving, it calls component to will leave. On the one that's entering, it calls component will enter. It will provide this with the two different sets of data that are returned from both components that are entering and leaving. And then it's up to the user to do its animation logic. I tried to do it before. I tried to incorporate all that animation logic inside of the component, but especially once you do like slightly different transforms, like 3D transforms or more complicated animation, it just seemed like impractical to all try to do it inside of the connected transition component. So I removed that part. Also removed that way the dependency on React DOM. So I'm guessing it should work in React Native also. If someone wants to try it, let me know if it works. I hope so. All right, so let's try to use this. Could someone hold my microphone? And I'm trying to just... Sure, if someone can still see or hear, that's fine as well. So we have 2 pages again. Yeah, 2 pages again with the images in two different positions. And now we want to use that component I showed earlier to transition between the two. So I guess first, what we want to do, see if it's all going to work. We give it a name, image will do. Then we're gonna need that component that's gonna get the hooks called on it. So we call that transition position. All right, still working. I don't know why, because we haven't created transition position yet. Nice. I think I all right. I broke it. Okay, well, I'm not gonna start over because I have a slide prepared just in case it wouldn't have worked, which is here. Ta-da! Can we move this? Yes, that works.
Can you take over again?
I will. Thank you, Antoine. Okay, so again, we have our connected transition component, we have our transition position component, and the image is still inside of it. It doesn't need to know anything more. It'll just do its thing. So this is now the transition position component. It has the component will enter. It gets the 2 sets of data, and it checks what's the difference between where we came from and where we want to go to, and just animates it using Tweenlight. You can use whatever you want. This was just convenient for me. So yeah, that works, great. I know these are not the most exciting examples, I'm sure. You can come up with a lot of better things. But these are the examples for now. What's this? Yeah, you can do more. You can change the scale, do whatever. Fancy 3D transforms. those are a bit trickier because when you get the bounds, you get it including the transforms. So if you have 3D transforms on your components, it's gonna get its client rectangle is gonna be maybe a bit messed up. So you'll need to do some more legwork if you want to make that work. All right, some examples of where it's been used. Oh, right. That animation actually doesn't use it. Where did we use it? Videos, I think. Yeah, this video is just a different component which is rendered via a portal to a different part of the DOM. We also had a lineup page where we had all the people who would be performing. So you could go next and previous, and when you did, nice. Afterwards, when you clicked the close button, it would then return to the position of where you ended up in the grid. But I'm can't show it right now because it's not active. What else do we have? By the way, there are also like a couple more bits to the components, such as in this example, the original component isn't actually leaving the DOM. It stays there, but it gets disabled. So when this pop-up is active, the component has an exit prop that you can set on it, which will tell the transition, or will tell the component as well that we intend to be exiting. So it can still find that connection and still do the transition, even though it's not actually exiting the DOM, which is also nice if you're using something like React transition group, where when you're doing an animation, both pages are still in the DOM for maybe half a second to a second, but you still want to make that connection when you start doing your transition, not when you're finished, and it's basically pointless. What else do we have? Yeah, there's another code pen. This one I made. It's just a couple of items, and it's showing it here in combination with the before mentioned React transition group. So we can go towards a detail view. We can kind of navigate around. And when we want to go back, we can return to our overview, and it nicely returns to where it came from, which is nice, I think. All right. A couple things I want to mention. I kind of like this approach. It's not ideal yet. I hope if more people use it, I get some feedback on it to see whether it works well in the wild and if other people like it and what could be improved, because I'm sure there's something that could be improved, or a lot even, I don't know. I also like this approach because you can still do things like code splitting in your pages. You can have your different pages in different files, and as long as they're mounted at the right time, before the original page is leaving, you can still make that connection, even though they're just two different pages and two different files that share no logic or no actual data or whatever. I think that's it. I hope there are questions. Maybe I was too fast on some things or not clear enough on others. So
applause. Applause. Thanks, Onno.
You're welcome.
Probably there's going to be a lot of questions. Yeah, Nick, come on. Overwhelmed. Of course, else I would have questions, but Colin?
So what would be the hardest part for creating a transition library like this for React? Because you have to lifecycle things. So what was the hardest thing to do?
Actually, the hardest thing I found was combining everything with React Router and React Transition Group, because you have a lot of the transition group has a component, router has a component, and like the transition group has to kind of talk around the routes to let the components know when they're actually going to exit. So that was annoying. Also, when you're in this example, when you turn, you see that the when you go to the detail view, you have a nice fade out of all the other items. When you return, you don't have a fade in because I found it hard to know, like, okay, I know which component is gonna fade or like connect and transition inward, but I don't know of all the others what they're gonna do. I didn't find a good way to have those be notified of the fact that they aren't going to transition and could play something different, like a basic fade in. So that's still something I'm trying to find a good solution for. Also, if I now go to like the fourth one and return, it's not like the scroll position isn't where you might want it to be. So there's also room for improvement there. Haven't found a good solution for that as well. Yeah, but this is
Other questions?
You wanted to have some more feedback, so where can we find it?
The component has a GitHub repo and an npm package. It's called React Connected Transition, so I'm sure you'll find it if you look for it hard enough. So yeah, take a look. I hope you will.
What would you advise people being a little bit new to React to take as steps to get started with your package? Would you advise them to immediately dive into your package, or would you have some other tips and tricks to start up?
Yeah, I don't think I would advise any newcomers to React to start out here. It seems, I mean, if you will, or if you're up for it, you can try, but maybe there are easier place to start. This could get overwhelming, especially when you want to do the combination with transition group and such. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it for a first beginner, a newcomer to React, to be fair.
Really fair. Any other advice you would give where to start then, in that case? Where did you start with React?
I honestly can't remember. I don't know. I just started trying some things, doing some things. Don't start with Redux, just start with just React, its own state. Just don't try to pull in too many packages at once, just keep it basic. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, another question.
Yeah.
What's the advantage above just vanilla JavaScript and CSS transitions of React? Doing transitions in React.
Besides just vanilla JavaScript? I don't know. I haven't attempted to do these kind of animations in just vanilla JavaScript because I've been, for a while, quite used to the React paradigm. I'm sure you could, because right now, what all this component does is just wait for two events to happen. They could happen one after the other, you don't know when each of them is going to happen. It's not like first unmount, then mount. So you kind of have to deal with like promises to make sure they're both called within a certain time frame. But you could do that in vanilla JavaScript as well. It's not something specific to React. So yeah, I'm sure you could. Someone might try.
We should get paid for promoting React, right?
All right, I have another question. Like, let's say I'm. Is it going to work with multiple items and multiple animations? Like, let's say you have an image, you have a title, you have a subtitle, and they all are going to get animated out of this screen into the detail screen, but they all have their own animations.
Yeah.
Is that possible to just wrap all of that into?
As I've done it here, I have just two connected components. It's the image and it's the title. Those are transitioning. As you can see, the text is also kind of following the position of the title, which is like another small feature of it, that you can have like a passive listener also listening to those events that are happening. If you give it the right name, it will listen for it. I don't think it would work very well if you try to wrap everything inside of a single. But in the end, it's just a matter of finding the right data you want to pass along and then listening for it on the other side. So you could, I suppose.
Yeah, but the thing I'm wondering is if it would work in like a complete timed animation. Like the animation is going first, 0.6 seconds later, the title has to do something, and then the subtitle. So it's one timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Would that work?
You could try.
All right, I will try.
I hope so.
All right. Yeah, another question? Don't be too hard, huh?
Okay, so when I was working with React Transition Group, the hardest part was like once you've scrolled on this page and then transition to the next page, and you scrolled there, and you wanted to go back to the previous page to restore the position where you came from. Are you going to implement something like restoring the actual scroll position in your library, or is there anything you think about on how you're going to accomplish that? Because in your presentation you said you didn't have that yet.
True. It probably won't be a part of this package, but I'm still trying to find a good solution for it. There are, of course, methods of doing this, but combining it with the transition. The problem is when you, when say this view mounts again, I want to get the position of the item that I want to animate towards. But if I at the same time scroll the page down, it's going to be at a different place. And if I'm not exactly sure what happens first, then I could just get the completely wrong position and animate towards the wrong position. So that would kind of mess up the animation. So I haven't found a good solution for it yet.
If you find it, let me know.
I will.
All right. I think we should give one last applause for Onno. All right, we take a 15-minute break, so that means maybe more burgers, I don't know. And after that, Colin will give us another talk. All right. Keep on rolling. So we're back again. I think this is always the time in the break where we give an applause for Harm and the burgers. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he deserves it. Every time again, the best burgers of the house. Don't laugh. If everybody's ready, then I'm gonna give the mic, well, he has his own mic, to Colin. So give him an applause. Colin.
Hello. So I will give my talk today about the progressive web apps and modern web APIs. So the first question, who knows about a progressive web app? Nice. So first, who am I? I've been at DPDK for 2 years. I started here as a backend developer, then some front-end, then creative. I love JavaScript, but in the end, I'm a PWA engineer. So, well, I started my graduation project here in February. And yeah, I started researching progressive web apps, so what they are for. So then I gave myself this name. So, whoops. What are they? A progressive web app is a responsive, connectivity-independent, app-like, fresh, safe, discoverable, re-engageable, installable, linkable web experience. Well, that's basically it. So I will guide you through all of the points. So first, responsive. It has to work on a mobile device. It has to work on a desktop device and everything in between. Connectivity independent means that it works on slow networks. It works when you're offline, which is weird because it's the web, but it's possible. And it works when you have fast Wi-Fi, of course. And they should be app-like. So the name says it all, progressive web apps. We are trying to create experience that feel like native applications, but then on the web. So then they also have to be fresh, which means they are constantly updated. You can update them in the background, just like you have, for example, WhatsApp. When you get a message, you will get the message even when the app is not open, when your phone is asleep. But in a progressive web app on the web, you can still achieve the same thing. They have to be safe, so just HTTPS, the green lock icon, then you're fine. And they have to be discoverable and re-engageable. So every progressive web app has to have the same icon, the same description, the same title as you would find a normal app in, let's say, an app store or the Google Play Store. Because these are then they will be identifiable as a real app. And they, when they have all this information and like an icon, you can install them and you can link them. So when you send somebody a link, they can install the web application on their phone, and they will actually get an home screen icon, well, at least on Android, and they will be between the regular apps, so you won't even notice the difference. So, yeah, in the end, they have to be reliable, fast, and engaging. That's basically it. So that you won't see the dinosaur again, sadly. But when you're offline and you go to a progressive web app, you should see the actual app. So it has to have an offline state. It has to be fast, so it has to load really, really fast, just like a native application. And the last one is engaging. Make it feel like it's at home, like at home on your device. So it has to be between all your other applications. It has to have the same look and feel. And well, when it's fast and works offline, then it's kind of the same. So what does progressive mean in this case? So this is a very easy example. At first, we have an HTML anchor tag, which everybody knows here probably, let's hope. When you click it, it goes to the About page. Yeah, but that's without the JavaScript on. What if you enhance the thing you have served? So at first, you send this anchor tag, which at first does nothing, but when the JavaScript loads, it can do a lot of other things. So you can enhance it with an on-click event. You can fetch dynamic data. You can do a page transition with, for example, the React transition group. And then, yeah, you can do a lot of other things, but it still works without JavaScript, so it's an enhancement. So they call this progressive enhancement. So at first you have something that works, and then you have something that works even better. So the feature of the story, I guess, is create a structure based on feature support. So that means gradually unlock features as browser vendors ship support for them. So when you make a website and you check for features instead of what browser you're on, you can just tell, does this browser have support for this feature? Then use it. If not, then use something else. But you can make experience with the latest APIs available, but still have support for older browsers like EA. We all still have to make websites for EA, but it's cool that we can use the on-edge features of Chrome, for example, or Firefox. So and Safari and all the other things, Samsung Internet, whatever. But yeah, it's a cross-browser thing, because you have support for the latest and greatest, but you still have support for the oldest. It has to work everywhere, but just enhance where it's possible. So during my graduation, I researched these things a lot, and I've come up with a kind of recipe for how to make them. So the baseline requirements. At first, we had a whole list of those things, but how do you achieve them? So the first thing you need for a progressive web app is to have HTTPS. This is the green lock, and it will make it secure. But this is not only for the security, this is also because half of the APIs I will talk about in my talk will not work if you don't have HTTPS, because the browser just lock them. You cannot use them if you are not secure, which is great. Then you have the service worker, which is an API that makes it possible to have the whole application offline. You can store assets offline and make it super fast. Feel like when you have first loaded it, afterwards it's instant. So it makes it feel at home between your other apps. And then you have the web app manifest, which tells, where it is. So for example, the Android home screen, what icon to use, what name to use, what splash screen to use, or even in the Microsoft App Store, it's coming with descriptions, with screenshots of what it is, and you can install it. You can install the PWA from the actual store. So it really feels like it's at home there. So then pick your tools. But what tools are right for the job? So I'm not going to tell anyone to use a specific library or framework, but you have to consider a few things when developing something like this. It has to be really, really fast. And by really fast, I mean really small. So yeah, what tools are you going to pick, and what do you need for the actual project you're going to work on? So you have some things to keep in mind. Size, like the tools you're going to use, how big are they? Are they going to load fast? What is the performance when they're actually loaded? And what kind of syntax do you like? What functionality do you need? Do you need WebGL libraries, like they are big? Or do you need just rendering, or doesn't matter? But just keep these in mind when you develop. So you can make them. These are some screenshots from Hacker News. It's like the new thing to do. Instead of making to-do lists, they make PWAs with all kinds of libraries. And they prove that it doesn't matter what you use, you can still make this, because all of these score great. They're with Preact, React, Vue, Polymer. So yeah, there's all kinds of people making these with different types of frameworks and libraries, but they still work exceptionally well. So here's just a slide of just a few random things. I mostly use Preact and React, but I like the syntax. But everything can be fast as long as you're going to put it to its limit. And web components. So step 3 is to optimize what you're going to deliver. So we all know the basic things like gzip. It compresses your files, it's fast. But there's some things we cannot know about the user. We cannot know what connection they have, how fast their connection is, or just overall. Yeah, sometimes you are in the train and you go through a tunnel and you just don't have reception, so the web page crashes or something. So we cannot know. So just another fact, we have to make everything that we load on the web, we have to make it critical at first, because what we want our product to be in the hands of the user as fast as possible. So we have to keep in mind that every single request is critical if it contains an asset that are necessary for the first render in the user viewport. So, for example, if we want to have a fast page, but we want to have videos, the first part they see on a mobile device should be fast and should be almost instant, but we can still use those videos if they scroll down, but just not load something like 20 megs before showing the first thing. That's, yeah, it doesn't make sense. So make sure you prioritize what you are going to load. And just another fact, the average JavaScript bundle is 450 KB. So this might not sound like a lot, because we all have fast smartphones and we have 4G networks. But we have to keep in mind that this is a lot, because it's not only loading, it's also parsing on the device. It makes it slow. And you might also say, well, we have an image of like 1 megabyte. We have 10 images that are like a total of 5. But it's different, because JavaScript bundles, they prevent the first initial render. So this has to load, parse, and then we can show something. But images can be lazy loaded. You can have an interactive app and just still have the images loaded. Like, for example, Instagram. When you scroll, the images might not have been loaded, but you can interact, you can like, you can read comments, but the images are loaded afterwards, so it still feels fast. So, yeah, whoa, JavaScript, but whoa. Monitor how much JavaScript is delivered. So, you have the tools you're going to use, but make sure that you know how much you're going to deliver. So, for example, you have the bundle analyzer in Webpack, and it tells you exactly how much JavaScript you're going to use, how big your components are, how big the external libraries are you're going to use. So, get rid of unnecessary dependencies. For example, well, I'm not going to call names, but if you use a specific library for one function and like 80 million functions in there are not used, then get rid of it and replace it, because it's just a waste of speed overall. So, and there's probably way better alternatives. And another thing is implement code splitting. So only load the things you need. So, for example, if you're at a home route and you want to go to the about page, at first you go to the home route, so you want this to be as fast as possible. If the about page needs something else, then load it once the user gets there, instead of just loading everything at once. And also consider framework alternatives. It's kind of the same as point 2, but this is like the bigger part. So instead of just small functions, look at your whole structure, see if it actually does what you need it to do. So the last part is make it feel fast. So there's a couple of different stages that I've researched, and there are in the guidelines of a lot of companies that are working on this. So the first one is first paint. So this is the moment when you press a link and you see something for the first time. This could be anything like a preloader or just a background color or just anything that's not a white page. Then you have the first meaningful paint, which is the moment that you see content of the page itself. So it tells you you're on this page. You have a logo, you have some text, but you know about what is going to be on the final page when it's loaded. Then you have visually complete, which is the part when your whole screen is just filled with content, and afterwards it gets interactive. So everything is loaded, you can click around, you can navigate. And that's the point where it's actually interactive. So that's kind of what you have to measure. So I will show you 2 demos I worked on during my graduation project. And these are both really fast. Oh. Whoa. Can we refresh it? Yeah. Oh. So the first thing is this one, and it might look like a really simple application. It is. But what we can do is we can add a city, and well, this is kind of mobile made, but you can see it has a city, it has weather information, but the biggest experience for this was using the service worker to have actual notifications. So in native, we all have a smartphone, and we all have like millions of notifications every day, but it also works on the web, which is kind of cool, even when the tab is not open. So here you can choose to have specific notifications, which the browser will ask permission for, and you can tell, yes, I want notifications. So from now on this laptop, we'll get the weather notifications. So then there's this one, which is just an enhancement on the bigger part, because with this application, I wanted to have user data. I wanted to have user-added locations, weather information for those locations, and make a bigger website with the data that I had. So yeah, these locations were added, and I had data to make an application that has all of the things that I just talked about. So it has a map, it has Google Maps, which is big, but it's still like really fast because it's lazy loaded, and it's loaded after the first thing, which is the focus. The list is loaded. The cool thing is also that the list is offline available. So when I turn off the Wi-Fi, which is risky because it's the first time loading. Oh. That might have been the worst idea, actually. Yeah, whoops. Glenn. Oh man. Yeah. Okay, so we can continue. So, well, that this website works offline doesn't mean the stream works offline. So that wasn't the best idea. But in the end, when you load this at first, you have actual information, and when you load it again, it's available offline. It's available really fast because the images you see over there with the weather icons, the data, the whole app shell, everything is placed in the cache. So it's almost instant, and the only thing that it loads is the new weather data. So when you have a connection, then then it gets the new data, but you still see this data instance. So when I refresh, you instantly see the new data, but the map is still loading.
Just curious, can you show us can you throttle the connection in your DevTools and show us how fast it is?
Yeah, so that's a great idea. I can just toggle it here instead of just the whole computer. So I've used this toggle a lot when I was developing. So when I go offline, you can see you are offline, and the data was last synced 28 seconds ago. And the Google Map is offline because you're not allowed to use it offline. So it tells you this feature is only available offline. But when I refresh, it's still there. It's still almost instant, and you still see you are offline, but you still have all the data. And I just loaded this, like actually during the presentation for the first time, and it's still all there. So when I go back online, then you automatically get an update. So the map comes back, the error, the message was gone, and yeah. So this is really fast. So that's basically the demo. So yeah, again, the recipe that I use kind of, you have the baseline requirements, you pick your tools, you make sure it gets delivered to the user really fast, well, and you make it feel fast. So, and keep testing and keep repeating, because yeah, maybe at first you have a website and you have content with just 10 images, but when content gets added, it might add up to 100. So then it gets slow. So you have to keep tracking what kind of performance you deliver to the user. So taking this just a little bit off, here are some modern web APIs that I used. And the first one is probably the most exciting that I already talked about, is the service worker. So the service worker is something, is just a script of JavaScript that lives between the browser and the network. So it intercepts every single request and has power to instantly send something back, choose to go to the network, go to the cache, or yeah. So the service worker is basically a proxy that can make it really fast. So you can, for example, say the website is being asked for. You go to the service worker and then you pick the content you have from the cache. So it's displayed instantly. But on the other side, it might still go to the network and just load the new data and then just replaces it and also update the cache. So yeah, this can make it really fast and work offline, because you have full control as a developer over what is stored on the device locally and what is going to happen when you do a new request. So yeah, this dyno is really sad because you won't see it again. Well, you can, but maybe the dinosaur is going to be a PWA soon. So this is how the service worker works. You have an install event, which is basically when it's installed for the first time, you can cache some static assets, for example, your JavaScript or your main route to make it offline. Then you have the fetch event, which is used to intercept every single request that is being done from the page. So, for example, when you fetch an image, you can say, I want this image to be in the cache. And when you fetch a video, you can say, just keep updating it from the network because it's big. And then you can also have an activate listener, which can be used to update the cache, because when everything is cached locally, it gets stuck. So at first, I was trying some things, like during this period, like half a year ago, and Antoine here was testing it by then. So I didn't know that the actual browser cached my service worker, and it also cached my cache. So it was kind of weird to see that a few weeks ago he was going to the actual route in his browser localhost 3000, and the page was still there, and it was just stuck. And when he refreshed, it didn't work. He had to clear it because the service worker was cached, so nothing new was being pulled in. So you have to be careful. Always set a max age on your service worker, because your production website might be stuck. So then there's another demo that I made, which is basically like the gallery you have on your phone, but then just a web variant. So what this does is it uses the service worker to pull in an image. So for this, I use a random image. And when the internet is fast, yeah, the image gets loaded in, and the image is going through the service worker to the browser. So I am caching all of these. So these images work offline, and I can also, as a developer, give the power to the user to say, I don't want this, remove it. And now it's also gone from the cache, so you have full control. So this could be really cool with like articles that are readable offline, or videos that are being made offline, but just not in native apps, but also on the web, which is really powerful, I guess. So these are just some screenshots. Save an image. You have offline content. You can remove it if you want. And yeah, just an image of how it looks like a real app. This is just in the app drawer of Android, and it fits right at home because, yeah, Looks cool. So then you have the background sync and notifications API, which is also inside of the service worker, and it can be used to make push notifications happen or update data when the user is not even looking at his app or it's not even opened. So for example, I can ping to users if they are subscribed. They have to give permission. But when they have, I can send them information from the server. I can talk to them instead of they're only asking me for some information. So I can send them an information with a weather update. For example, you can in this application you can subscribe and you get a weather information with an icon. So then there's also the fetch API. A lot of you know how Ajax works, and you can just do dynamic requests and get some new data in. But what is really cool and not supported, as you see here, might be hard to read, but it's loading in the background. But once it's loading, it starts rendering, and it does this parallel to each other. So it's still loading, but it's also rendering at the same time, which is really cool because in the end, it takes less seconds to complete because it does it parallel. And that's for example, you have 100 locations, and these objects are really big.
Does it work with binary data or with text data?
Okay, so the question was, does it work with binary data or text data? Well, to be honest, I'm not really sure. It's I've read bit by bit, but so what if you have 100 locations that are all really big, and instead of just waiting for the whole batch of locations to come in and show it, you can show them once they get in. So you can show the user even the first one that has loaded or the second one. You can just do it at the same time, which is, well, basically just how this Oompa Loompa song loads. Pretty funny. So then there's also something we all know from native applications, how we can share on our mobile devices. So we have the web share API, which can be used to easily just press a button and share an article, for example. At first, you had to go to the the browser's share function and then press an app. But the developers, they don't have control over what is being shared. You have the meta text, but it's not really custom for things in your web page. But with the web share API, you can make this all custom. So for example, I check if the function exists because of progressive enhancement. And then once it exists, we can share it, and we can add our own title, our own text, our own URL. And then the user is prompted with just the apps they have, so they can share it. And this will be, in the end, what they are going to share. So it's, again, makes it feel more at home. And then for the last one is something that I really like. It's the intersection observer, which is something we've been trying to achieve for a long time. So, for example, you have a row of images, and you want to check if an image has entered the viewport. We have all had these ugly hacks, but this is really easy to do it. So you have a root element, which is the container of the element you're going to observe. And you have an element that you're going to observe, and you have a callback. So for example, this thing over here, you can see that it's, well, in the percentage, but you can see that it's 60% in. But if you would scroll up, then it would actually update with how much of the percentage is in. So you can do things like animations based on the percentage. You can lazy load images, so if they're in the viewport for like 50%, just load them. You have a lot of control over what is in your viewport and what is leaving. So that's really handy. So that was basically it.
I think people are still wondering, are progressive web apps fast?
Yes.
Yes, great. First question. Whoa, all the way in the back. This is going to be it.
So I was wondering, basically the rules that you apply to progressive web apps, they apply to basic websites in general, right? Because you would always want to have websites to be quick and load easily and be responsive. I'm wondering what's your take on, is a progressive web app an innovation upon websites, or do you see it as a separate growth within websites and apps, basically?
So I see it as a fancy term, but it's actually how every website should be built. So in what you say, every website should be secure and fast and feel at home when you're using it. It should be responsive. It should use the latest features. It's all just what we actually should all do as developers. But PWA is just a term to have all of these things in just one group and just say, this is a PWA, this contains it all, instead of websites that just don't do it all.
Clear? Another question. Yeah.
Hey, Colin.
Hello.
Thanks to you, I started playing around with service workers and used that as a school project of mine. And after a few days, my classmate started complaining. Why isn't my CSS showing? I've made some changes, but I'm not seeing them. Well, they were cached by my service worker, of course. So he had to update the service worker name, so the CSS got reloaded, or remove the service worker at all, so he can just apply changes and see them directly. How do you handle this? Because it's getting really annoying to change my service worker every time I make a change in my JavaScript or my CSS.
Yeah, so during development, at first I didn't know what a service worker was, so it was not a problem. But when I implemented it, most of the time when I was developing a feature that was not in the service worker, I would just turn it off. So I wouldn't have to kill it all the time, because, yeah, well, like you said, things don't update when you have. But there's also a few Webpack plugins, so when you compile the code, they will actually create a service worker automatically, make it work offline. But for my case, I just turned it off when it wasn't needed, and then always turn it on for production.
All right, thanks. Another question, sorry. You talked about progressive web apps needing to be safe, like everything, of course. Have you already come across some new types of vulnerabilities, since they're all new things, like new ways of hacking people, or like a few years ago when people with an iPhone got a text message that you could shut down the iPhone? Is it possible that there are already vulnerabilities like this? Have you come across these yet?
Personally, no. But I've seen some funny things like CSS and JS, which can be dangerous because you can do some funny requests. But specifically with HTTPS and just security in browsers, I've not seen any weird hacks, but there might be.
Cool, thanks.
Just make it HTTPS.
Always.
Always.
Do you think the end of net neutrality is going to affect web apps?
Ouch. That's kind of an actual question, but it might be, because well, in the end, I hope everyone is going to build these, and if they want to be fast on a specific network, it should be because the developer made it like this, not because someone tells it to be fast or slow. So in my opinion, yeah, if you make it fast, it should be fast, and yeah, that's basically it.
Nick, you have a question?
I was wondering, does iOS support all these APIs, or?
I knew this question was coming. So at first, no, it wasn't supported. But a few months ago, I think 2 months ago, the development team of WebKit put the service worker in production, like the status of it, or no, in development. So they have been testing it in the technical preview of Safari, and it will come to iOS. So that's cool. But no, at this point, it's not working. So still progressively enhance, do it where it's working, and just find an alternative for when it's not like iOS. So
What alternatives would you find? Or
I wouldn't really mind suggesting, but app cache. It's an old version of just caching assets offline. But yeah, most of the time, I don't know. Maybe just don't do caching anyways. Then don't make it offline.
All right, another question for myself. Yeah, you can go after me. Come on, wait for me. Could you give a clear example on when you would build a native app, like just a native iOS or Android, or actually choose for PWA?
Yeah. So let's just make this clear. Not every single native application has to be converted to a PWA, because that's just a stupid thing to say. But for example, you have iOS and you have things like Health Kit, or you have Android and it has AR Core, or just some specific OS-based APIs that are being created for native applications. The web is something that is on all of those devices, and some things, for example, Health Kit from Apple, will not be able to work on the web because it's something from Apple. So there's a lot of examples actually where you just need to build a native app to get the features of a specific platform. Otherwise, go for the web if all the features you need are in there.
Now it's your turn.
Awesome. All right, so I'm not sure about Serviceworker. I haven't used them yet, so maybe it's just a stupid question. But
there's no stupid question.
Only stupid people, right? But I was wondering, like, the Serviceworker is kind of like caching stuff, right? But wouldn't it be like a privacy vulnerability? So let's say someone would have an app and it has a service worker working, and let's say he's walking around. Would it be able to actually save the locations offline until a person is online again and then send that data? Like, is there a vulnerability to a service worker? Like,
so
privacy-wise?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First of all, the service worker you register they are inside of a scope. So for example, I have my own domain, and every service worker that I create on the user's device is on that domain. So they cannot reach other websites that you're visiting. But the other question, there's a lot of things you cannot do from a service worker. So I'm not sure, but I think you cannot access like the user's location. You can only use the background sync API, for example, when something on the server pushes something to the user. And every single time someone pushes something to the service worker from the outside, it has to show the user a notification that something is going on. So it shouldn't be able, and I really hope it's not, but it shouldn't be able to have things running on the background that are just scraping your information. So you...
We have clients that are just asking not to cache something in the proxy.
Yeah, well...
So we are just blocking caching all the way. They don't want it to be cached.
Yeah.
They only want to request. And yeah.
Yeah, so
that's a trade-off between
performance, yeah. Yeah, so some clients don't want to have their assets cached, which is also something. That's up to the developer to say something have to be cached and some things don't. Because, for example, I always use the caching based on my domain. So when I have assets, they are cached. But let's, for example, say I have a Vimeo video on my website. I don't want this to be cached. So every single external link, like the Google Maps, are not being placed in the cache. I can also say, don't do this format in the cache or this specific image in the cache. As a developer, I have full control over what is getting there. So.
All right, thanks.
So for all the people out there that already have their own website, and they're like, oh, cool, now we learned how we really need to develop our website. Can you give them some small advice on how to upgrade the current website with the things you just told?
Yeah, so there's a lot of resources I found on YouTube, and just the overall Chrome developer team, but also the Firefox developer team, and yeah, all of these can be found very easily. But one thing I would recommend is just look at GitHub, maybe my GitHub if you want. But all of these things I've shown you today are on my GitHub with the full source, how to start, what things I used, how I implemented the service worker. Yeah, so just look around for people have already made these things, so you can just learn from them and then go your own way. So, or just add me on Twitter and just ask.
Oh, commercial thoughts here. One last question, all the way in the back again.
Hi, Colin.
Hi.
Hi. So I was wondering, progressive web apps and basically stuff like the what's it called, service agent, worker. Don't they enhance the fact that basically your own personal device, be it your phone or your laptop, gets more vulnerable for your privacy because you in time more and more webs will be caching and storing more stuff on your device, basically, eventually making your mobile or your phone the more dangerous device rather than the internet, and then making your device a target maybe for hackers and such.
So my advice would be never store any sensitive information inside of the cache. That first of all. And at this point, the service worker has access to the cache, but normal browsers at this point also have this. But the service worker just only gives the developer more control about what is being added there. So yeah, first of all, just don't add sensitive information in the cache. And service workers live inside of this scope. I'm not sure how safe they are from the outside, but just be careful and just only put public assets or just anything that can be found on the internet inside of there. So don't store passwords and stuff inside your cache.
But you could say potentially the developer could make it more safe rather than as kind of being set up right now in terms of caching and...
Yeah, so in the end, the developer can choose what is going in there, and the user can also choose if the power from the developer goes to the user, what is being stored as. So for example, the images, user can add them, but the user can also delete them and they're just gone completely. So give the power to the user, I guess.
I think that's some famous last words. Thank you, Colin. All right, it's always my duty to give some final words of this to the evening. First of all, of course, I want to thank all of you for being here. Our doors are actually open till 11, so if you want to take a drink, ask some personal questions to Onno or Colin about their work, that's possible. Wait a moment, yeah, I know, you're gonna get your turn. We have two things left. Firstly, Anouk. Yeah, Anouk. She wants to take a selfie. Yeah, come on. You want to? Yeah. Oh, come on. So wait, before we do this, I want to thank everybody on the live stream and see you next time, because then we can shut that down. So wave to the stream. Bye bye. Oh yeah, the live stream is over.
Is it still on? I would like to take a selfie and then I'm going to post it, and I hope you will all go to follow us on Big Square.